Hello, good morning.
Hey.
Tammy, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you guys doing?
Oh man, I love it. It's so we kind of do have two slots every week, and it's always fun to see who goes where. We have a Thursday night one and we have a Friday morning one. We don't talk about this until they're on the show, but people have been amazing at self-selecting the vibe that fits them. And it's really been an interesting experiment. We got to almost stop talking about it on the air because
I
otherwise
have a
people
little bit of a headache from Thursday because it was just me and Matt. It's the first time we've done just us in a while, and
yeah, we had a
I
guest
found this
cancel last
bottle of
minute.
mezcal that I was very happy about.
Yeah.
Friday's a little bit more reserved. It's a little bit more positive.
Yeah. If you're going to drop things like fascism and stuff, that's a Thursday night situation.
Yeah,
right?
I roll out of the way and then I show my Fidel Castro photo.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah. But I love, I honestly, I cannot wait. So you're funny for us because you came to us by a woman, the same woman who we actually reached out to two IFS type people. And I want to make sure we're in the right spot here, right? Yeah. Okay, just making sure I had that right. I like that.
We're consummate fucking professionals too. We're getting t-shirts.
So by the way, let's talk about construction techniques in Southwest Adobe. Like, she's like, are you sure you know who you're talking to today? No. Yeah.
Is this the past lives person? No.
Yeah. No. But weirdly, both of her connections reached out and right away.
Immediately, both of you said yes.
And I was like, sweet, we get to have two very similar conversations. And I love doing that because what I find interesting, and Tom, I think you tell me if you agree, but what made this podcast happen in the first place is the diversity of how we deal with these topics. And I love, even if you're talking, we could have 16 episodes on IFS. I'll bet you no two are even remotely close to the same thing. Right. And I love that. And we
could do 16 as each a different part of us.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I can't fucking wait, dude. You're killing me. Okay. So Tammy Sollenberger, did I get that right? Okay, yeah. Cool. So let's before we dive into like the 5 million questions that I'm going to throw at you, because I love this topic so much.
Matt's a huge fan.
Let's just talk about you for a second. Like, tell us how you got here and, just kind of bring us into the orbit here.
Okay, like how I got to you guys, or to...
No, just how do you get to do it? Yeah.
So
I woke up, I brushed my teeth.
Your people.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, no, what got you into it? I mean, what you do is not. Let's go out on a limb and say it's not like everyday people stuff, right? Like this is pretty specialized. It's a little unique, and I'm just curious how you got into it. Give us your little backstory, I guess.
Yeah. So I was just a regular IFS therapist. A regular therapist doing just talk therapy. And then I went to a workshop that was about like children and teens or something like that. And this woman just started talking about curiosity and this sort of new model that at the time had been, 25 years old, but new model that everyone was talking about in Boston. And she started talking about being curious and what if we were curious about, our clients' behaviors or our clients' thoughts, whatever. And I had been doing CBT, which is, cognitive behavioral therapy. Everybody kind of knows what that is. And so, in CBT and DBT, which is what I was trained in, we challenge thoughts. We look at, behavioral analysis. We're really in our heads. And I felt like I was kind of arguing with people all day long. And I'm not an arguer. And so I just thought, wow, what curiosity, I don't know, this sounds so ridiculous now, but I'm like, it never dawned on me to be curious about my clients, about their thoughts, feelings, behaviors. It never dawned on me to be curious about my own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, right? I was always like, change, this feeling doesn't make sense. I need to change my thought because I would change my feeling and I'm so emotional and what's wrong with me. And so, yeah, that's where it started, which is sort of like, that feels really different and what that feels softer and more compassionate. And, and that's where it started. And so I, looked into what IFS was and began a pretty long process of training and doing my own IFS work. So that's where it started with just that idea of like curiosity.
So curiosity kind of was a leading concept in IFS, or is it just kind of the thing that got you looking at it?
Well, I think it's both. So in IFS, there's what we call the true self or the authentic self with a capital S, and self has these C qualities. So a quality of self, we think about that feeling that you get, or the experience that you get after you go for a hike, or maybe you look at a sunrise, or sort of when you're in flow and you're like, I just feel like me. And that me feeling has these C qualities like compassion, clear-minded, curious, creative, connected. And so that's where the C comes in, that curiosity. And so that's what happens is in my true self, in my authentic self, I'm more curious. I'm more curious about you guys. I'm more curious about myself, versus parts of me are more like, what's up with these guys? Not really, but like, right?
Yeah,
like, what's up with
no,
them?
no,
Or
No,
a
I
little
get
bit
that.
more
I
like,
get that. Yeah,
I wouldn't fault you.
here?
I
Yeah.
mean, half the time I'm thinking the same
We're
thing. What
pretty
the fuck are we
shady.
talking about here?
yeah.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, okay. That seems to be a common thread, actually. In the few conversations we've had about IFS in general, it seems like it's like an empathy-led practice, right? Like, and it sort of starts there, right? And it's almost
guilt,
like the
no
alpha
blame.
and omega is there, right? Like it's kind of like it all sits in empathy, right? And I mean, is that kind of a fair 50,000-foot sort of takeaway from this?
Sure, because I think what happens is we're just sort of, I don't want to say it this way, but kind of naturally annoyed, frustrated, questioning.
Yes,
Why
please.
did you do that? Yeah. Okay. Matt's raising his hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So sort of that just feels like, because we have parts, those are parts of us. So it's not natural, but there's parts of us that are because they're protective. So I have to walk through the world with a protective layer. So my protective layer is going to be like, what's up with you? Right. That's my protective layer. Like, why did you do that? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? You know what I mean? That's kind of what we lead with. Like, we lead with protection because we need to, right? We need to lead with protection. And so that's where sort of, there's no curiosity there. There's just protection, which we call parts.
Right.
I love that we've heard a similar explanation, but it's so, when it's expressed by a different person, you get a little like slightly different view of it. And I love this protection idea is like, all of these reactions that we have. What'd she say? They're either firefighters or
Managers.
managers.
Yeah. So what I love about what you're talking about here, and I'll build on what Tom said, is that as we go down the rabbit hole of all these different things, we develop like vocabulary that just didn't exist before. And I think that really in IFS, from what we're getting a bit better picture of the more conversations we have about it, it feels like a lot of articulation, at least from my side, that's been helpful to be like, I now have a set of words that I can use to describe this thing that we all kind of had a vibe about, but we really didn't have words for it. So it just sat as this like sentiment, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't an actual thing. Now I have words, I could touch it, right? Like now it's something I can put my hands around and, give it a bear hug, punch it in the face, whatever I want to do with it. But I can at least
it's tangible,
interact with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess I guess along those lines, what kind of got me asking the question is it seems like you might not be the only one that kind of bridges this gap from CBT to IFS because of that vocabulary. It's like, well, wait a minute. This is like way better way to describe this. It's a very more connected way to experience it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, think about what happens when you're like, okay, I'm so frustrated that I want to, drink less during the week, right? I drink alcohol, I'm drinking wine every single night, or I'm drinking whiskey every single night. And I want to, you guys are getting drunk on Thursday nights.
Yeah. We never said drunk.
We're just feeling a little bit weird this morning.
Yeah.
We're normally high too, for what it's worth, Tammy.
Okay, so there's some part of you that's like, maybe we should just do that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just Friday and
Right.
Saturday, Sunday, maybe not so much Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? So there's some part of you that's like, let's just sort of maybe just do it 3 nights a week, not 7. And so, but there's another part of you that's like, I actually prefer to be high and drunk, actually. I like, that's a good feeling. I like that. And so if we have the language of part, so that could be confusing, right? That could be like, what the hell is wrong with me? Right? Like I keep drinking and getting high every night, but but I'm so frustrated with myself, and what the hell's wrong with me? And actually that what the hell's wrong with me makes me want to just drink and get high even more.
Correct.
Actually.
Yeah, it's like a feedback loop.
Totally. And so if we have the language of parts, this brings a lot of ease and compassion and harmony, and like, oh, okay, this actually makes a ton of sense, right? I have a part of me, of course, it feels good. I drink, I get high. I love that. It feels fantastic. And I have another part that's like, yeah, but then you forget to do stuff, and then we forgot to pay our rent and shit. Like, so, okay, that makes a lot of sense, right? One just wants to feel good, of course. And one's like, dude, you got to adult a little, just a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then I am there too. And so that's the thing that, IFS is not just parts work. Self is there too. So there's this part that says, have a good time every night. There's another part that says, hey, let's limit that to 3 times a week. And then I step in their room, right? So think of it as sort of like these 2 little children, they're bickering back and forth, and they're throwing their toys around, and they can't agree, and they're, really upset. And then the adult you walks in the room, and you've got snacks, and you've got blinkies, and you've got extra toys for everybody. And you're like, I'm here. You guys are okay.
Right. And that's the part that I find interesting, because, when you paint a picture here, you are literally walking into this, metaphysical world that they've created. And you're sort of Sherpaing them through this. And yet you don't live there. You didn't fabricate this. Has nothing to do with you. But that empathy side is kind of like, I don't know, it just kind of feels like, well, if I was having this issue, this is what I could imagine they're going through. Or, like maybe you, and especially after you do this for, 1, 2, 1,000 people, I got to imagine that there's some core things that don't change dramatically from one prototype to another, right? Like, I don't know, maybe that's an oversimplification.
Yeah. Is it, I guess, and I'm going to piggyback off of Matt here. Is it like, do you keep seeing reoccurring part types in different people? I mean, is there only so many ways to slice up our psyche?
Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Those are acorns. They're acorns.
Oh my God.
No way.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Wow. Yeah.
I was like, what are we talking about here? We're all looking at each other. What was that?
Cat following that kind of disruption.
Yeah.
There's acorns falling on my house. I know.
That's crazy.
I know.
Where are you at geographically?
I'm in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you're
it's fall.
in fall.
Yeah.
It's fall. Yeah. Fall
literally falling
there.
on my house.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We're in Baltimore, and fall is like a quasi season here.
It might as well be England.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't not rained in like a week and a half.
Yeah, it's pretty muddy here. So, but yeah, so that is a good question, actually. I mean, do we kind of see repeating archetypes like in parts?
Yeah. I mean, I think most people have a critic, right? Like most people have a critical part. I think, depending on lots of things, depends on how loud that is, or what form it takes, or, what kind of stuff it says to you. And then, I think most of us also have that kind of using part, whether it's using alcohol or drugs, or sort of, it doesn't have to be addiction, but sort of the part that's like, I just want to feel better. And what's my
a coping part.
Exactly. Like the quick hit of feeling better that we got when we were younger, usually, right? So whether it's
so like a dopamine chaser.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And it is funny because I have a 16 and a 13-year-old, and Tom's kids are like a year younger than mine.
14 and 11.
Yeah. So they're close. But I realize when we have a conversation with someone like yourself, and then like tonight when I'm, tinkering around with my kids, I sort of start to realize things differently. And it is funny, when you are a kid, that dopamine chase is super easy, but it happens a lot. Like it happens like as a routine, not as a treat, so I can go to work, I can get up, get my kids ready for school, get them out to school, come back, do 18 conference calls, and then parcel out in my brain, now it's reward time. Right now I can go have a drink. I can
Miller time.
Yeah, it's Miller time, right? Yeah. I can do whatever I want, but I can tightly parcel that, and I could say, okay, this isn't the time for reward. Kids are like, fuck it, I'm just, this is what I want to do. My
There's
son,
candy there. I'm gonna eat candy.
Yeah. I tell my kids actually are weird kids in the sense that like they hear me talk about all this shit, and I constantly, when they do something where I'm like, you're just too reward centric, I'm like, you guys failed the fucking marshmallow test again. And they're like, no, you told me 2 hours ago that if I waited, I can get 5 marshmallows. Now I waited. Fuck you. I am right. You're wrong. And I'm like, God damn it.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. But like they're chasing it all the time. And like, so it's funny because like, I guess in one side, that's sort of what you're supposed to do as a kid, right? Like that's sort of the right time in life to do that. And I sometimes get a little overly worried about like, have we underdeveloped the parceling capacity?
Oh God! The number of times I've asked somebody like, "Is this normal kids' behavior?"
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then I'll ask my mom, and she's absolutely no help.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you raised 2 kids. She goes, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's not the answer I was looking for, Mom.
Yeah,
that's not it. Tell me what the hell. Do I slap them? Then that's when I slap them, right?
Yeah.
No, you can't slap them.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, no, wrong answer.
You sure? Sure?
But think about if you had a kid that, so that's so developmentally appropriate, but think about if you had a kid that was perfectionistic and a hyper-focused, right? Like wore certain clothes every day and then came home and was like, okay, you're like, hey, come play basketball with me, buddy. And like, nope, I need to do my homework. And then I need to do this. And then I need to do that. And so that you would be concerned about that, right? If they were too we call those the managers, right? The managers that manage our life that say to you, Matt, like, okay, do your conference, sort of that in behavioral therapy, we call it the grandma principle. Do your work and then you get a cookie, right? So you're like, I do my conferences and then it's Miller time, right? So kids don't know that, but if they did that too much, we would be concerned about them because that actually isn't really developmentally appropriate for them to be that anxious or uptight. So I would be like, okay, so they've got some parts that are actually really running them, and I don't want that for them. I want them to go play, So
sure.
So Tammy, can kids do parts therapy? Because I think, we've heard about it as adults, and yes, we're talking to inner children in some parts, but it's not all kids, right? Some of them are just assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're an asshole. Yeah. But think about, okay, so I have a 13-year-old too. So think about your kids and the parts of them that are still our babies, and they want to sit in your lap and they want to snuggle. But you know what? They also want to be cool and they want to be adults and they want to do it themselves. And so they have parts of them that still want to be babies and still want to be taken care of. And they have other parts that want to do it themselves and want to be independent. And depending on where they are, what's happening, or how tired they are, or if they're like at the mall and you're like, let's hold hands. Or they're like, no, I'm too cool for that. Sort of those are those parts of them make so much sense, especially at this age.
Sure.
And so I can say that, right? Like I use parts language with my son all the time. I mean, he's aware of it now. But that it's really good to use that language, right? I know a part of you really wants to eat those marshmallows, but another part of you knows, hey, if I wait, I get more. So it makes sense that there's a little bit of tension. I want the marshmallows now, but if I wait, I get more marshmallows. And so I can hear this part of you, right? Or part of you is pissed at mom because she's making you do the dishes, but another part of you knows that actually it's really good for you to do the dishes because then you get $5 allowance.
Well, and you know what's interesting about what you say is like
$5 for doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Jesus,
I have no idea.
In the wrong field.
Yeah,
I don't have dish money for my kids.
Yeah, just making it rain up in here. So but yeah, it's interesting that you say that because you're arming your 13-year-old with vocabulary, like we were just talking about, right? And when we were all kids, our vocabulary was fucked up. Like, I mean, I've slept a million times. How many times have you said, oh, that's retarded? Like, how many times have you said that when you were a kid?
Well, we had to have a little sensitivity training on ourselves here. One episode. We're like, it was a word from the 90s.
Yeah, like,
we didn't mean...
It wasn't even from the 90s.
We were never even calling people that were mentally handicapped that. We're sorry.
Yeah. Right. It wasn't even a 90s thing. That was
Yeah.
a hangover from the 80s, right? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
so like,
yeah.
I mean, but again, that vocabulary was fucked up. It wasn't necessarily like meant to be, you know,
Attacking
condescending or
yeah.
attacking or hateful. It wasn't like a bully term, if you want to use the terminology. Bullying, it was not even a fucking word when in the 80s, right? Like it wasn't
Right.
bullying. Actually, that's not true. Bullying in the 80s meant I got punched in the face by some big kid, right? Like that's what that meant.
It was a very 80s movie type bully, though, right?
Like
it was
the Karate
I want your
Kid.
lunch money. Give me your
Right.
snack.
Yeah.
You know, like it was. But we had shitty vocabulary. So as a result, when we're talking about this, everyone blames it like, oh, the Xers have like low EQ when it comes to so no, we have low vocabulary.
Yeah.
Like this is
I also
SAT
feel like
problem.
we don't give a shit about certain things, though.
Well, and we
either.
also
you know,
don't
it's
care.
like,
Yeah,
come on,
I mean,
man, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, I couldn't care less.
Look, the world's on fire. That is not on my radar.
But by contrast, my 13-year-old is my daughter. She comes home and she said to me, what did she say? I'm going to murder this, but paraphrase. She said, yeah, I was talking to this new kid and he hasn't figured out his they, them yet, but he's working on it. So we're just going to kind of pause until he tells us what to do. And I was like, holy fucking shit. I can't believe you just said that. Like, I mean, and I was so impressed with the articulation of that because I was like, there's no fucking way at 13 I would have described that situation. I'd be like, I don't know, the kid's gay, maybe, I don't fucking know. Like it wasn't.
And that would have been it. Like you would have been. You don't have to give him grief or anything. It's just that's it. Yeah.
And so like, again, she has this vocabulary. Now, sometimes it goes the other way. I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes like there's an over articulation or a misunderstanding of the articulation where you're basically like, oh, I don't have to do that. Like she said something the other day, I don't have to do that because it's not my true self or something stupid. I'm like, you heard that on a fucking TikTok. You're going to fucking forget that right now, or I'm going to smash your phone with my foot. That's how this is going to go.
I guarantee you whoever said that was drinking a pumpkin spice latte and had a giant hat on. You know they did.
Yeah. But you see what I'm saying?
Probably in
like,
a pumpkin patch.
Totally. Yeah. There's a man bun
there was
involved.
Something.
Yeah. Right.
Goddamn millennials.
Yeah. But and it's totally cool that she has it, and it's even cooler that she has to maybe be sort of guided onto how to understand it. But the fact is she has it, which puts her at a fundamental advantage over people who don't, right? Like, and I'm thinking in particular of these sort of backwater sort of stereotype racist folks from like the South, maybe that you see in like memes and whatnot. Like those people aren't necessarily bad humans. They just have shitty vocabulary. Nobody gave them.
No,
like,
they're shitty humans too.
They're also maybe
let's
shitty
not
humans.
defend them. They're shitty humans.
But you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes they just weren't given the tools to actually explore this. And like what I love about what you do and the pursuit of all this stuff is that we're trying to, I think in my mind anyway, I'm trying to grab more vocabulary to make myself better and explain this to my kids, my family, my friends, people listening to this show. Like I think that that's not inconsequential, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think IFS did that. I mean, I think what I hear a lot is people say that they had these ideas, but IFS gave it a frame or gave it a structure, or like you guys are saying, gave it a vocabulary, like a system. It gave it a system. So now we have a system that says, okay, this explains everything we were thinking and feeling before. So now I have a system, I have a vocabulary. And, you know, I think I told you guys, like my dad's family is from Baltimore, from Dundalk. And so they don't care. I mean, my dad, I tried to talk about what I do. They don't care, right? And they're not backwoods, but they're from Dundalk and they think very differently than
Tammy, I'm about like 15 minutes from the dock. I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Sounds like, well,
my wife and I were like, why do all these women have very stringy hair? It's very what did they do?
Yeah,
like
what
nothing.
Are they doing
we're not making fun of them. We're just like, they all look a certain way. Yeah,
there's this thing going. There's a common thread here.
My office is about a block from the harbor on Canton side, and every once in a while we see somebody walking down there with a crab net, And every time they're walking down there with the crab net, I'm like, yeah, they look like they eat crabs out of the harbor.
Yeah.
It's like they're, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right next to the please don't eat anything out of here sign.
Yeah, but you know what? When I go visit my dad, we go 5 minutes away and get us a bushel of crabs for cheap, and sit in the backyard and have crabs. And
I wasn't knocking. I hope you took no offense.
I took no offense.
I'm a snob from the northern shore of Long Island.
Yeah.
Nelson DeMille writes books about my hometown.
Yeah. And I'm from California, so none of this shit means anything.
He's from. So, he is that SNL sketch.
Yeah. No, I don't have any reason to care about any of this. Yeah. So talk to me about the role that parts play, because I think that's one thing I'm not super. I had a very fun parts experience, and I don't want to go into. Tom's heard this story like 10 times,
like 80 times.
But basically, I was taken by storm with parts therapy one day when my coach had me in a conference room by myself. There was like 20 chairs at a table, and he had video conference, and he basically said, close your eyes. And he put me in a mild hypnotic situation and had me literally talking to people that were part of me. And like, what I found amazing about it, and I actually would love to hear what's going on in my head from your perspective, but I didn't need guidance. All he simply said was, look around and tell me who you see. And it wasn't anything more dramatic than that. It was basically like, who's the first person sitting? And it was something innocuous at first. It was like, who's sitting next to you? Right? Like, it was like real, like, let's crawl, walk, run. Right. And I think, I can't remember the exact order, but I do know a couple of the parts. One of them was this big hulking masculine dark figure, but it was like the dude who keeps shit in order, my type A, right? Like, that was you said you'd be here at noon. It's 12:01. What the fuck? Get your shit in order. Let's go. And then there was this like real feminine energy, like beaming with light, that was really my more creative, like, it's fine. 12:05, 12:07. It's totally cool. Because once we get there, we're going to show up this in super present mode. And, and we just went around the horn, but like he said, I would get up and walk over to that seat and sit down and physically like take over that person for a minute. And then it got weird when it started talking to each other, and it was like, it got crazy. But like, what role does how far down that rabbit hole does it get effective? Like, what's happening to me at that point? Like, just, that's enough. You go.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. So we have this idea of, we call it going inside, right? So you went inside, which means, our attention right now, my attention is outside. I'm looking at you guys are looking at me. My attention is outside. And so we can do this thing where we can actually turn our attention inside. Like, so I can close my eyes. I can, okay, what is here? Or in IFS, we would say, who is here? And so if that sounds weird, you could also think about, what thoughts are here? What am I saying to myself about myself? Or what feelings are here? What bodily sensations are here? So I turn my attention inside. Who's sitting next to me, right? So if I turn my attention inside right now, I can imagine that this, and you guys had a literal conference table, but we talk about sort of imagining this conference table and who's around the conference table right now. And who's going to be around the conference table right now is going to be different than who's going to be around the conference table in an hour, right? So right now, who's around my conference table is probably going to be a part that wants to explain this well, a part that my back hurts a little bit and I never have any pain. So part of me is like, hey, we don't have pain. So this is not, so that's pretty loud right now, sort of this pain thing and parts around that. So I can sort of go around the room, around the conference table, and just see who is here with me. These are the parts of me. They could be feelings, they could be thoughts, they could be bodily sensations, but they could be symptoms. But in IFS, we're going to call those parts of us.
So Tammy, first of all, that sounds, and I was going to ask, like, what's the genesis of these parts, and do they come and go? And it almost sounds like, and I'm not mocking here. It almost sounds like there's a seance, right? This is who's here now.
Right.
So that's who's coming through, but in a different situation, a different setting, a different experience, a different reason that you're doing the therapy, there might be different people there.
Totally. Well, think about, right, like, so right now the three of us are talking, but
Mhm.
in an hour, there's going to be different parts of you running your life, right? Because then in an
Mhm.
hour, you're going to, you think about different personas or hats that you put on or masks that you wear. We're going to call those parts. So in an hour, so let's say my son was coming home, then my mom parts are going to come in the room and they're going to make sure I've got him,
Right.
he's got a snack. And then what are we going to do later? And I've got planning parts. Or if in an hour I'm doing I'm teaching a class. And so, in an hour, I'm going to have different parts. There's going to be different parts here. My pain parts are probably still going to be here, but there's going to be different parts. There's going to be similar parts, but there's going to be some different parts depending on what I'm doing.
Sure. And I think that's interesting because I didn't actually go into that in my experience with it. It was actually just sort of who do you see, but that makes a lot of sense. Like, because that does, certainly I remember, and again, sorry, Tom, but I
It's
did
okay.
that program Lifebook a couple years back, and Lifebook I think is a very expensive way to present parts therapy because you have, I think, 11 parts in that system. So it's like financial, sexual, parent, like all these different pieces. So his whole premise was, when somebody says, "How are you?" you need to be more specific. Sexually, I got laid last night, so I'm doing pretty okay. Parent, my kid's an asshole today, so not so great. Financially, just lost a big client, so really not good. So be more specific when you ask me like how I'm doing, because
Right.
that's not an even keel answer.
Yeah.
And so that was the first experience that I had, was saying, I wonder what happens when you break you into pieces, like, because and then I started to realize for a short time, and this was probably a few years before I did the conference table thing, but I did start to think about my life differently, be like, man, I feel really depressed today. And it's not that I was depressed, it's that I didn't have an answer from a client, or I was on the verge of losing a client, or I got a no from a client, right? Or maybe I was like, damn, I just really need to get laid. Like like it was all contingent on everything that was going on. So like I started to get very good at like peeling away, like, well, I'm not really depressed. I'm just pissed off about this client thing, or I'm pissed off because my kids are being jerks or whatever. But that helped make it better for the other 10 parts, right? You're like, all right, well, my kid's an asshole this morning, but we landed a huge deal. And it's Friday, so maybe I will get laid. Like, so these things are good. These things are not so good. But let's differentiate between them before I get up.
But do we even want to have a judgment on those? Is I guess my question.
Well, so a couple of things that come up for me when you say that. So when you talk about the genesis of this, what's interesting to me is, so you have a part that its reaction is depression, right? Like, so I'd be curious, where did it learn, right? If you ask, so Matt, I'd say to you, ask the part of you that's presenting as depressed, no matter what's sort of all these things happening, where did it learn that that's how it had to deal with things it didn't like, or how it had to deal with,
because so why is this your reaction?
Exactly. But with curiosity, because that's the part, right? So the part that's in front of you, the first part is depression. And then when you ask it what's going on, there's a story, right? With the clients and my kid and blah, 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 blah. But if we get out of the story and we just talk to the part as if it's a person in front of me, I'm curious, like, where did you learn that's how, I'm repeating myself now, but where did you learn that is how we deal, right? Because other people are going to handle that with like, I'm going to be shoving cookies in my face, or I'm going to get high immediately because I'm so frustrated, or I'm going to be angry. So I'm really curious, like, okay, what's happening, buddy? Right? So can you get in a relationship with it? Can you find out how old it is? Does it know how old you are? Like, let's get out of the story and see if you could get to know this part that is like, something's didn't go my way, or yeah.
Now, let me ask you something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
No. Because immediately I'm going, oh, was this all childhood trauma? And I don't think that's necessarily it. But do these parts form?
Well, and to piggyback on that,
are they all trauma-based formations? Are they positive experiences?
My question is almost the same. So before you answer, just to build onto that, like, how important is it that we get to know that part at that level? If we already, like, for example, with my depression, I could have easily presented and said, rather than get depressed about losing a client, I'm going to figure out why we lost it, assimilate that into my general repertoire, and do better next time in that situation, right? Like that could be a valid expression of that same emotion. But like, do I have to like get to know its age and all that stuff to kind of dig into that level, or is it just helpful? I mean, I guess talked about that because it kind of builds on Tom's thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's make it super normal, right? Like, so if I'm a kid and my mom is upset because she's a human and she has parts and she came home from work and she had a bad day and she's upset. And what I learn is if I am really funny, then mom is in a really good mood and I get love and that feels really good. If I learn that I'm really organized, if I learn that I go clean my room, if I help her. So if I learn that if mom is upset, which is going to feel like disconnection and scary for me as a little kid, and then I do something that actually changes her mood, then parts are going to be like, oh, we just learned something. And then they're going to do that over and over and over and over again.
Right, now it's repeating. It's like ingraining.
Exactly. So when my teacher's upset, I'm going to make sure I'm a really good girl. When my boyfriend's upset, I'm going to be a really good girl. When my friend's upset, I'm going to be a really good girl. I'm not going to cause any problems and I'm going to be really nice and smiley. Right. So my parts are going to learn that and it's going to get reinforced over and over and over again. So now here at 50 years old, one of my major parts is this nice girl and other parts are like, can you just shut the fuck up, right? But
sure.
Me, I'm like, you just said F. What? You just said the F word.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if I look back, it doesn't have to be drama, right? I can just see this pattern of how niceness protected me. It protected me. It kept me close to mom because when we're little, we need to be close to our caregivers. Like that feels really scary and that feels like survival. So it kept me close to my caregivers. It kept me not in conflict, not in trouble. I was likable. Everybody liked me. It made my life easy, made my world safe. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
now,
no, actually, it makes too much sense, really. Honestly, I mean, it's like, oh, fuck, I know. Yeah. Because it explains so much, right? Like, I mean, it explains so much. Like, look, we're all on this ball together, right? Like, and you have to sort of coexist or else you're sort of not here, right? In the same capacity, right? So that protection mechanism takes, I would think, very common form because like you are either going to not know how to handle your differences, and that could present in, I don't know, the goth kid who said fuck the world and is super ennui every minute of the day, which is a protective mechanism for them, right? Like saying, I'm different, fuck off everybody else. And that's not necessarily healthy. Or it could be like the extrovert who's, wearing skimpy clothes and like flirting with everybody. And like, that's also protective in a way. So it's like, I feel like
for their learned behavior, but I also feel like this is where imbalances lie too, because sometimes nice girl is not what should be there, right? I mean, like if you're in a situation where it's like, look, the nicer I am to this person, it's only going to get worse. That's not balance either.
Well, right, exactly. And so nice girl, so here's the other kind of trippy thing about IFS, right? Nice girl, let's say, is 5. At 5, I learned this. Let's just say 5. At 5, I learned this. And so let's say I'm in a work environment and I'm not being treated well, right? I'm not being treated well, whether for lots of different reasons why that. And if my 5-year-old is running my system, driving the bus of my system, then I'm going to put myself in positions where I could be harmed. I could be hurt. I could put up with stuff that is not safe for me or not good for me. Or I don't say anything when someone sexually harasses me. I don't say anything because I'm nice and I don't want to get anybody in trouble. So because those parts of us, not only is she 5, but she's, she kind of was created, that's a weird word, but sort of came online at 5, but then it's just reinforced. So there's sort of nice girls like 5 and 7 and 12 and 19 and 20. And does that make sense? And so, so what you're seeing is, because the same thing could happen. Mom could come home and you could be the goth kid that's like more depressed, more angry, more sulky in my room, because either that keeps me from feeling the feelings of mom, or then maybe mom gets really nice to me, or that changes the family dynamics in some way. And so it's all protective mechanisms, right? So we could say we wouldn't say it's healthy or unhealthy, or we wouldn't say it's balanced or unbalanced. We would
Correct.
just
Yeah,
say
right.
it's protective mechanisms, or like you said, coping skills, but they're parts that learn to cope for a good reason. And so if we got curious about it, about the person doing the behavior, that I'm like, why are you doing that? I would find out, right? They would ask their parts, and they can find out, and I can find out what's the story. What's the story? What happened that was what was going to help them survive their family, even if it was not trauma, but just sort of surviving the family.
Yeah, no. And it's funny that again, the words you're using, I think paint pretty vivid pictures for me, because when you say like they came online at 5, right? Like that's a very software. I do software development for 25 years now. So like that's a very software-y kind of way to describe it. But it is unspoken on my side, but like I do think of like health in general as software, right? And that's one of the reasons why we started this show, honestly, is like the chemistry set that is my body is super fascinating to me. And so when I look at it, I say, okay, well, this is an input variable, this is an expected output, like, and I can predict those things because like I have history, and it's almost like a revision history where I can kind of go through and be like, all right, well, at this revision history, we looked like this. We made some changes, and now this revision history looks like that. Didn't work. We got to roll back, like go back to a different piece of software. And it's like, I know that's really super reductive, but it feels like a great way for me personally to explain it to myself, if nobody else.
Yeah. So the idea then is, if I go back, so my true self, my authentic self, that calm, creative, curious, if I go back to my 5-year-old, that initial creation, and I say, hey, sweetheart, I get why you're here, and I get this feels safe, but I'm now 50 and you don't need to do this anymore. And we can, and this is where sort of, IFS gets even more woo-woo, is I can say, you don't have to do this anymore. You can come to 2024 with me, because these parts get stuck in these scenes. So she really feels like, I'm nice girl or I'm dead, right? I'm nice girl or I'm dead. And so I can, or I'm alone, or I'm unloved, or I'm uncared about. And so I can take, those are our core beliefs, right? Those core beliefs that she's holding, we call those a burden. So she's holding, I'm kind of oversimplifying this a little bit, but sort of this holding these beliefs and these burdens around who I am. And so these other parts are protective parts that have a job, right? Nice girl is a job. It's a manager or firefighter, and it's helping the sweet little girl who feels like she's unlovable, or, going to be left alone, or she's going to die. So those are the two parts. There's sort of the exile that has this burden of unlovable, and then these manager parts, the protective parts, the managers and the firefighters, who come in with a job to help. And so then I can come in and I can say, hey, we don't have to do that anymore. Like, yes, it's still nice to be nice, but I want the choice. And that's another sort of C word, is I have choice. I can choose to be nice. I actually like being nice. It's natural and normal for me to be nice, but I also can choose to be like, I don't think so. Right. No, that's not going to work for me. So I can choose that.
And I guess 2-part question, like, how easy is it to sort of remold that part from a regressive lens? It seems like you're like, okay, I'm literally going back to the 5-year-old because that's how old she is. And then I guess once you do sort of alter that, like, how permanent is that change?
Yeah. So we like to think that's permanent, right? Because that part's not stuck there anymore. And the more I can sort of check in with my part, do a little rewiring in my brain, right? Because there's also sort of wiring in my brain that this is sort of how we do life. This is how we function. And so the more I check in with my system, maybe I do some journaling, I think it can become pretty permanent, but we might have to go back because, like I said, lots of my parts have this burden around being nice. So I might need to be reminding them,
like a shared burden.
Exactly.
I see what you're saying.
Can I? So you're saying there may or may not be a full assimilation. I don't want to say dissolution of that part, but like it seems like you can keep the positive aspects of that. Well, and I understand we're not trying to assign judgment, but yes, I still have the ability to choose this pattern or this part if I choose to, but now it's a conscious decision made by the capital S self rather than a protector response.
Yes. 100% yes.
Okay. All right.
because I can still be organized, right? I can still be
Yeah.
organized. I can still, be perfectionistic if I need to be. But there's choice, right? There's choice, and it's not. And then my life isn't run by these younger parts that are doing it out of fear, right, or out of burden, right? I have to be nice because I'm scared, versus I have to be nice because I like being nice and whatever. Like,
and I think that's got to be a big part of what you try to suss out while you're working with somebody is like, is this a fear motivator or is this a just personality motivator, right? Like if it's just you like being nice, that's one thing. But if you're being nice because you don't want to speak up that somebody just hit you in the face, like that's maybe less healthy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's,
yeah.
Not to assign judgment, but that's objectively unhealthy. Like,
Exactly.
let's maybe look at that.
This behavior is harmful. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So that's what you're going to bring in, whether it's to your own IFS curiosity. You don't have to be in therapy, but that's what you're going to bring into like, I don't like, I do this. It doesn't have to be, whatever that is, right? I don't like, if you're fine with getting high and drinking every night, okay, that's fine. But if it causes problems with your family or with your, money or whatever, then it's okay. Well, here's a little bit of a problem. So what's my problem? Like, is my problem being too nice? Is my problem drinking? Is my problem perfectionistic? Is my problem, I work too much? Is my problem I spend too much money? Sort of what's my problem? And then can I turn towards that with curiosity and be like, okay, are there some parts involved here? And, where else have they shown up in my life? And maybe where's that origin story? Can I just be curious about what's going on and maybe invite the parts around a table to see what they want to tell me?
And, the curiosity part is it just like sort of like the slow clap moment for me kind of thing, because I'm just like, dude, if we could all just be a lot more fucking curious, that would be better. Like, you know what I mean? Like in general, how like there was a really fun quote in Ted Lasso's the first season about curiosity. And it was like, he basically, he was challenging this pompous. Did you guys ever see the show, by the way?
Ted Lasso?
No, and I have total.
Oh my god! I got a sticker on my little thermos.
Yeah, all the cool kids saw it.
Characters.
I feel like all the cool kids saw it, and I didn't see it.
So the coach that ran Matt through there, I could only afford 1 month with him.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to the parts. But like he literally made fun of me because we were talking about Ted Lasso in kind of like a group session. And he goes, "You don't have Apple TV? It's only $5 a month."
Yeah,
and he's like, "You got to see this show. It's great." And he wasn't wrong. It was
no, it's
brilliant.
Great. But there was there's a scene in there that Tammy, you would love this. Like, Google it. There's 500 YouTubes on it, but there's a 2-minute thing about be curious, not judgmental.
The dart scene.
And he's playing a game of darts with the protagonist bad guy. Right. And he is the protagonist good guy. Right. And they're sitting in a bar and, it was the team. He was going to give up the team. He wanted him to stop being the coach, and the rich guy owned the team. And he goes, "Tell you what, I'll play you in darts." And this guy thought he had him dead to rights. He's like, "I'm going to fucking mop the floor with this guy." And he threw his darts and whatever. And Ted gets up and he's like, "You know what? My dad taught me to be curious, not judgmental." And he goes into this whole thing. He goes, "Had you been curious about my darts," and he throws a bullseye, he's like, "you would know that I played darts every Tuesday night with my father my entire childhood." It throws it again. Like literally, and he's going through this whole thing, and I'm like laughing because it's like it's such a great moment of just absolute, like, we could all be better humans if everyone watched this clip and like really integrated it into their life. Like
it could be one of the best parts of that, not to tie in parts therapy, but it could be one of the best parts of the whole series. That was
that was probably the best 2 minutes of all 3 seasons, which was one of the best written shows, like, I think, of the modern age.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody comes out positive at the end, which is
everything's roses.
Not
it's
really
great. Despite being kind of shitty. Anyway. But yeah, so what I like about that is it kind of, and in martial arts, I mean, Tom and I both have martial arts backgrounds. That's like one of the primary tenets. Like, don't pick a fight with somebody because you have no idea who you're picking a fight with. This could be a world famous MMA guy. This could be like a fucking dude who's like a physicist who's never lifted a weight in their entire life. It doesn't matter. Like, you just have no idea. So be curious. Like, is this guy going to dismantle me? Like, or not? And I think that like, those are things though, that again, we weren't taught to do. I was born and raised Catholic in a very Catholic area. Nobody questions shit in Catholicism. It's just blind faith. You're good, you go north. You're bad, you go south. End of story. Nothing else. Say 10 rosaries and you're good to go. Like, I mean, but that's it. Like that, you know. And then my grandparents, like, they embodied that, like, you know. And then my other grandparents were military, career military, 30 years on one side, I think 25 on the other. You don't question shit in the military, right? And in fact, if you were like, oh, I feel a little bit depressed today, my grandfather might have said, "What the fuck's wrong with you? Get out of bed, go do your shit. Shut the fuck up."
What do you I've literally said to my daughter, harden up.
Yeah.
Why? Because like my, you know, mom that was raised in a family of 6 by like like my grandmother was a fucking cafeteria lady. Life was hard. This is not. I
told my son to man up once and then went and told my coach that. He's like, "I'm going to have to stop working with you if you ever do that again." He was like, "You never, ever utter those words." In fact, I'm almost of the mindset to go apologize to your son. I'm like, he's at school. He goes, you know, you gotta get this under control. You cannot do that ever again. And I was like, see, now you've given me better vocabulary. I can go be a better person because you showed me the roadmap. Like, you gave me the pathway to get there, right? Like, it wasn't that I was incapable of it, but it's almost like somebody gave me permission to be curious about a part of myself, which all of that whole sentence is batshit crazy, a la 1982 Matt.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and certainly 1982, my parents who were like, would have been like, even to this day would probably be like, I don't understand what the fuck this kid's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and I think parts help us understand, why did I just say that? Right. Why did I just say man up? Or why did I say, I mean, I've said to my kid, you're ruining this.
Right.
And then I'm like, why did I just who said that? Right. Because I feel like I didn't say it. Like, I would never say that to my child. Right. I have one child. It took me forever to have him. Why would I ever treat him badly 1 second of his day? But there are parts of me that are like, get it together, kid.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
Right. Like, we're having a fun time and you're ruining this fun time, you know? So parts of me help me understand my reactions as a parent, right? Like, their parts trigger our parts. Like, parts of our partners trigger our parts more than anything, right? I'm triggered more by my kid and my partner by anything else that I've had in my life.
Absolutely. They're the closest to you.
Yeah.
Well, and the curiosity that you're experiencing lets you then go right away or more fluidly into a different space where you're like, all right, look, this kid's not burdened with the shitty call I had today or the lost client or the whatever. And like, they don't know any of this stuff. So let's wrap it all up in a ball of tinfoil. We're going to move that to the side. We're going to focus and like, lets you sort of work through it.
Yeah.
Do the old school, just tuck it deep down inside.
Just tuck it deep down. Yes.
Put it in that tinfoil and throw it away. Yeah. Well, that's what we normally do. But then let's just say that I say this thing, I tell my kid to man up, and then then there's a disconnection between him and I, or he feels shame, right? So something happens for him and he feels shame.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to experience that in some way. And then there's going to have to be a part that copes with that, right? So then I'm going to drink a little bit more, eat a little bit more, or I yell a little bit more, or there's going to be some sort of, or even if I feel the shame of that and I tinfoil wrap it and throw it away, something's going to have to come in to help me with that. Yeah.
And what better way to create bad patterning for your kids than to do stupid shit like say man up when you're like, you weren't, it was a reaction. It was like no different than getting hit in the knee with a hammer, right? You're like, your knee just comes out. You know?
Yeah. So can I bring curiosity and also forgiveness to myself? Can I repair internally with a part of me that did that? Like, yeah, I know where that comes from. It comes from how I was raised. Okay, that's okay. And then I can repair with my kid, which is beautiful. Like, we're going to mess up. We are going to mess up. And so can I repair and say, I am so sorry. A part of me said that to you and I am so sorry. And I want to talk about how that felt for you and what's happening for you. Like, repairing internally and externally is like magic. It's like magic sauce.
Let me ask you a different question real quick. If you see something like, you know, my kids, like I think some of it is just teenagers, but like my son in particular, I think really doesn't have like a sharing his emotions kind of vibe. Like if you were to feel something like that. And that's just my own experience, but I'm sure everyone's got something like that with their kids in particular, or their mate, their partner, you know, whatever. How helpful is it to sort of start to peel that back with them one-on-one versus like, because you don't want to go to your wife, husband, partner, you know, whatever, and be like, honey, I think you need therapy. Like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna recommend a therapist to you, and even if it's just parts,
I gotta say, even doing with my daughter, I think she goes, "It's because you think I'm fucked up, right?"
Right.
And,
Yeah,
and
like,
it's like, well, look, I have now like 3 therapists, and it's because of you.
Yeah. You want to know why Daddy drinks? Yes.
I had hair.
Yeah.
my blood pressure. No, but yeah, it's real hard to see like what triggers you, and then having that conversation. Tammy, can I ask a real kind of like, this is such a basic general question. This is not a one and done type scenario. What does like a course of this, like a therapeutic dose look like, let's say? And I know that's going to be different for everybody, but is there a general kind of time frame running sessions with this, or?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think one of the things that I would say is if people listening just begin to think about themselves in terms of parts, just think about themselves, the things that are bothering them, the interactions they have with their kids, with their partners, with their, job stuff. Can I just think about those in terms of parts? And then I can remember or sort of catch myself in this true self. Can I catch myself in calm, in connection? What does that feel like? What does my body feel like? Can I catch myself in self? Because everybody has that. Everybody has that ability to have that experience. Or where am I curious? When am I curious? So that would be my takeaways is naming and noticing parts and start catching myself in self.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, it's not necessarily a time box so much as it is a sort of a bar. Like you once you can get to this point, then we can kind of consider this
we
being
can come
helpful.
back. But even I remember my therapist with CBT, right? It was even like, oh, now you're noticing that you're reacting.
Yeah.
And now you can address your emotion because you had the reaction, but you caught yourself in it, right? It's not that you didn't react anymore. It's not that you were, dead inside. It's that, you had it and you caught yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's not like you're going to be, you're not going to have any parts anymore. You're just going to be sort of self-led all the time. Like that's not going to be a thing. I mean, this is an ongoing life practice, right? An ongoing life practice where I'm noticing these parts. I mean, these parts can also bring playfulness and creativity. And, my 5-year-old isn't so worried about being a good girl or nice girl. She can be 5 and she can put in my system creativity and fun and lightheartedness, that our kids can bring to us. Our kids can help us do that. Like if I'm sitting on the floor playing cars with my kid and I'm like, I'm just organizing these cars by color because I have no idea how to play anymore. Right? Like, and so if my 5-year-old, it can put in some more play and more creativity and more of that childlike fun.
Yeah. It's funny how we lose that, right? Like I have a pretty creative outlet during the day, but like, ask me to play Yahtzee with like my family. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do that anymore. Right. Like I just don't, the idea of
I don't
sitting
know.
down to a Monopoly.
People often ask me, are you 12?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Look, I'm sorry. Farts are always funny.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And it's funny. I have a bumper sticker or a magnet on my car that is the square root of 4,000 something, but the answer is 69. And I find that endlessly funny to me. And my wife is like, my kid was like, what is this? Why is it? It's been on for like 2 years. And he goes, what is this? Square root of 4,700. I'm like, and so he pulls out his iPhone and he's like, oh my God, that's the funniest thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's been there for like 2 years. You just caught on to it. And I love that it took him that long because it's like kind of funny, but I find that shit endlessly funny. I don't know.
We have at my office, we had the screaming goat. It's a little statue. You press down and it goes, right? One day it wasn't there. Now, I can't blame anybody. We have 30, 40 people come through the office every day. But I went online and I bought 2.
Yeah.
and I put one in a drawer, and
Just
I
as a
put a note
backup
on it
screaming
that
goat.
said "Emergency Backup Screaming Goat." And somebody opened the drawer, and they're like, "You have a doctorate." I was like, "Yeah," and I also have a backup screaming goat, because if it's missing, I'm going to be upset.
Yeah, right.
Love it.
So Tammy, your book, I like bite-sized things because I think it's really cool for people, especially who haven't really explored things before. Talk to me about like this, what is it, a word a day, I think it is, or something like that. Like how do we talk to us about that? Because I am curious about this.
Yeah. So my book is called The One Inside, 30 Days to Your Authentic Self, and bite size is a great way of describing it. And so basically it's one word a day, and it teaches you how to do exactly what we're talking about today. Like go inside, notice your parts. And so it's just one word a day for 30 days that helps you connect with your inner world. So it teaches you IFS at the same time that it really walks you through kind of how to do what we're talking about doing.
I don't want to give away the secrets, but can you give me just one word so I can kind of land?
Are they all C's?
Like, are they all
There's a lot
C's?
of C's. Curious is there, connection.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
So like today we're going to
like,
talk about curious.
Yeah, and so, but it has flow to it. So sort of there's an intro that teaches
that makes
IFS,
sense.
and there's a flow of like just going inside and just sort of noticing parts. And then sort of we talk about parts and we talk about self, and then managers and firefighters. Those aren't the words, but And then there's one chapter that's called, I think, morning, and it's just sort of like from that sort of like good night moon. It's sort of like I remember walking around and just sort of imagining just saying good morning to the trees, good morning. And sort of as I'm saying good morning, I'm noticing, okay, good morning to my parts, good morning to whoever's around the conference table. And the more I'm saying good morning, I'm just noticing who's here. And then I feel more heart open. I feel more of me here. And just from a 5-minute sort of good morning practice.
Sure.
So there's a chapter about that.
Oh, that's cool. And I love the bite-sized part because like I feel like so much of what people get hung up on is that they look at a complex concept like IFS and they're like, fuck, there's so much going on here.
Yeah.
And then it takes less than 5 minutes to realize, fuck, it keeps going. Like we're going to keep going. I can see this being very overwhelming to people. And honestly, I think one of the fun parts about what we do here is that we have now a DNA, like I have rewired my brain to be perpetually curious about anything because we get all kinds of people we get to talk to on the show, and like it's all over the place. Like, and some of the people are fucking nuts, and it's great, and I love it. And some people are super serious, and I fucking love that.
There's one episode where Matt's like, "You didn't say a damn thing," and it was like, I was in shock most of it. Like there was, I literally texted Matt mid-interview and I'm like, holy shit, this is our Terrence Howard.
Yeah. Like it was like, yeah. It was weird. But like, I love it because I can get curious. And as a result, I don't get intimidated anymore by the depth of a topic. Not because I'm like super smart and know everything about it in 5 seconds, but because it doesn't scare me anymore. Because I'm like, all right, we got to just dive in. Like, and if I want to do that, I know how to roll up my sleeves, get out my shovel and start digging a hole, right? Like I know how to do that. Like, and so, but most people, that's not like a normal, we do that because we've been doing this for a couple of years and we've got a lot of practice. We do a lot of repetition on this topic, right? So, but I love that I can be like one word a day. That's fucking simple. Like anybody can do that.
Yeah, and it's short. The book is little and the chapters are short. I mean, so that's the idea was really to make it, IFS easy and simple. And I think the other thing too is that there wasn't parts of me that were trying to be like, look how smart I am. You know what I mean? Like it was more like, let's dumb it down for the rest of us. Like, let's dumb it down so that the rest of us can understand this stuff, so
Sure.
This isn't just for people that are super smart. This is for the rest of us, right? Like my family's from Dundalk. Like, let's make it so that like my dad can understand this, like that's
like, I'm going to get beat up walking down the street. They're going to be like, you shat on Dundalk.
Yeah. Well, Tom wrote a book on cupping, same thing, right? It's like, this thick, it It's like super easy to do, and I fucking love it.
The publisher kept saying, well, it's a little book, and then my male ego was like, what's wrong with the book? And the book is fine. The book's the
it's
right
not the size of the book, it's how you use it.
The amount of information in that book is very valuable.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing. My wife likes the book.
Yeah, right. My wife never complained about the book.
Everybody likes the book.
Yeah, totally. No, but it's a great book. It's the same thing. I'm like, you know what? Everybody who's ever asked about cupping should just get a copy of this book because it fucking answers all those questions.
And it's so
super simple.
like, the thing is, and it's, I remember my mentor saying this, and it was like, look, not everybody goes to school for the thing that you learned. And that doesn't mean they're less intelligent than you are. They just it's not in their universe. And if you bring it to them, you have to bring it into a way that they understand, where you're not condescending,
right,
but you're explaining it to a level that reaches the most amount of people.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to see books like that, because if you want to write a fucking textbook, who the fuck wants to write a textbook? Well,
no. I mean, in an age where I could just ask any dumb question to the internet and I get an AI synthesized response from Google, I'm not reading a textbook. Nobody is.
Right.
Well, my favorite line from Beetlejuice is when they're talking about like the Book of the Dead, or what it was, the Handbook for the Dead.
Yeah.
And he goes, this thing reads like a stereo for instructions. And it's like, God forbid you're that obtuse, you're missing the point, or you're not able to direct somebody to like what you're trying to say. And it's a shame. Tammy, we better ask, how do people work with you? How do people get in touch with you? How do people get the book? I'm assuming it's Amazon and everything as well.
Yeah. But, so you get the book on Amazon, and it's in Barnes & Noble and, all the places. And you can just go to my website, TammySollenberger.com, and my book and my podcast. I have a podcast too. And so that's there too.
Oh, cool.
And
what's that? What do we talk about on the podcast?
We talk about IFS. So,
makes sense.
Yeah. So it's called The One Inside. Also, the name of the book, name of the podcast is The One Inside.
Oh,
and
awesome.
and it's I think because IFS can be like simple but complex, my idea for the podcast was I wanted people just to kind of, if I was talking to someone about IFS and we embody IFS, we're talking about it, I want you to feel like you can, pull up a chair and you're just listening to the conversation, and so
that was probably how this show happened. Matt and I were having the conversations in the back of a business group, and then somebody said, you should record this.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And I love that people can have these weird micro conversations and like build like little micro audiences that are just super interested in. It cracks me up every time I hear that somebody listened to our show. Like Tom was giving me stats last night.
Every morning I'll pull them up and I'm like, oh shit, we're going in the right direction.
And like people are listening to like 75% of the show. I'm like, who the fuck is listening to 75% of this nonsense?
Like, I gotta be honest, I'm only here for about 25 of it.
Right.
Where were you? I don't know. The Jeffersons theme song was in my head. Sorry.
No, it's a testament to the fact that like I think I think health has really, really become a rising tide raises all boats situation. Because if I know even a little bit about IFS, then I know a lot more about mental health in general than I did before I knew even a little bit about IFS. Because now my interpersonal communication skills are up leveled. My family relationships are probably up leveled. My professional life is more than likely super up leveled, because you're talking about like, EQ is super important in a professional setting, right? So like one little lever, you pull it halfway and 10 other things in your life go through the roof. If you pair that with like meditation, and I do the tapping thing every day now, and I fucking love tapping. And like, that was another weird thing. Like, you want me to tap myself in the face 1,000 times and fucking this is going to somehow make me better? Guess what? It does. Like, it works fucking weirdly well. Like, but again, little tiny lever, not a lot of information, big output, right? Big output. And I think that but anyway, Tammy, listen, we can talk to you literally all day long about this. I think the only point I was trying to make there was, I think it's really super appreciative that you write a book like this, because now you give that rising tide, you can just put a little bit more water in their tide with something like this. And like, I think that's really the name of the game these days, is don't overwhelm people with like how smart you are or how much you know about something. Just give them a tool.
Give them the information.
Move their shit in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Did we miss anything? I don't know. You got such a rich tapestry of shit you could talk about. Like did I miss anything? Did we?
No, this feels good. It feels really good. It feels fun. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, that feels pretty complete for me. What about the two of you?
No, I mean,
I don't
honestly,
know. I was going to make some joke where I referred to you as a good girl just so you left on a good note. And then it's like, that's kind of creepy coming from me. So I don't want to do that to you. I was like, no, that sounds weird.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, Tammy, awesome talking to you, man. You actually did come really highly recommended from Lauren Callahan, who was a guest on the show.
She was a great guest too.
Your book a lot. She's like, you got to talk to this woman if she'll talk to you. And I was like, yeah. And here you are. So
yeah, super happy to have you.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again for spending time. Have a great weekend, guys. And Tammy, we'll let you know when everything's up and running, and hopefully we can talk to you again at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Anytime.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Enjoy.
All right, thank you, Tammy.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.